You were just a bet to me. $10,000 to bring the cleaning lady to a board meeting. Steve's cruel laughter echoed through the marble hall as executives snickered. Amy stood frozen, humiliation burning through her veins. The project proposal she'd worked on for months trembling in her hands. But then William Windsor rose from his chair, silencing the room with a single gesture. "Actually, son," he said, his voice cutting like steel, "as of this moment, Amy Peterson has more authority in this company than you do." The color drained from Steve's face as his father handed Amy the executive badge that had once been his. The morning air bit at Amy Peterson's cheeks as she stood in front of the gleaming glass tower. 75 floors of steel and glass reached toward the sky like a monument to wealth and power. The Windsor Building, headquarters to one of the country's most prestigious financial firms, intimidated most people, but not Amy. At 25, she'd survived too much to be intimidated by architecture, no matter how imposing. "Just another building that needs cleaning," she whispered to herself, adjusting the worn strap of her shoulder bag. The early November wind whipped around the corner, carrying the scent of approaching winter. Amy pulled her threadbare coat tighter. She'd saved for months to buy something warmer, but the leak in her apartment's ceiling had devoured those savings last week. Amy took a deep breath and pushed through the revolving doors into the marble-floored lobby. Security guards in crisp uniforms stood at attention. Executives in tailored suits and designer heels glided across the polished surface, their movements confident, entitled. Amy felt the familiar sensation of invisibility wash over her, the way people's eyes slid past her as if she were merely part of the background. "I'm here for the cleaning position," she told the receptionist, a woman with perfectly styled hair and manicured nails who looked at Amy as if she'd tracked something unpleasant onto the pristine floor. 15th floor, maintenance and facilities. The woman barely looked up from her computer screen. "Service elevators are that way." She gestured vaguely toward a corridor off to the side. "Thank you," Amy replied with the politeness that had been drilled into her through 17 foster homes. "Always be polite. Never make waves. Be grateful for whatever you're given." The service elevator was cramped and smelled faintly of cleaning, chemicals. As it ascended, Amy studied her reflection in the metal door. Dark circles shadowed her green eyes, evidence of the night shift she'd worked at the diner until 3 a.m. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face clean of makeup. She couldn't afford cosmetics, but she'd always been told she had a natural beauty. Pretty enough to cause trouble, as Mrs. Wilkins, her last foster mother, had warned. The doors opened to a utilitarian hallway, a stark contrast to the opulent lobby below. Amy followed the signs to an office with a plaque reading, "Andrew Miller, Facilities Manager." A balding man in his 50s looked up as she knocked on the open door. "You must be Amy Peterson." "Yes, sir." Amy stepped forward, extending her hand. The way her high school guidance counselor had taught her, firm grip, look them in the eye. Show confidence even when you don't feel it. Andrew shook her hand, his expression neutral, but not unkind. "Have a seat." The interview was brief. Andrew seemed more interested in whether she could follow instructions and show up on time than in her resume, which was fortunate since hers had more gaps than employment. "The job's straightforward," Andrew explained. "You'll clean, executive. Offices on floors 65 to 75. That means desks, bathrooms, vacuuming, emptying trash. Hours are 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. after most of the suits have gone home." He studied her for a moment. "Most of these executives think the offices clean themselves overnight. They don't notice the cleaning staff unless something's wrong. That's how we like it." Amy nodded. Invisibility was something she understood well. Pays $16 an hour. Benefits after 90 days. Probationary period is 30 days. Andrew slid a form across the desk. "Can you start tonight?" "Yes, sir." Amy couldn't keep the relief from her voice. The pay was better than the diner, and the hours meant she could finally enroll in those community college classes she'd been eyeing. "Nancy will train you. She's been here 20 years. Listen to her and you'll be fine." Andrew stood, signaling the end of the interview. "One more thing. The executive floors have particular personalities. Just do your job and don't engage. Some of them can be," he hesitated, "challenging." As Amy filled out paperwork, she silently vowed that this job would be different. This wouldn't be just another entry on her long list of temporary positions. This was going to be the first step towards something better. She'd been treading water since aging out of the foster system at 18, moving from one low-paying job to another, one shabby apartment to the next. "Thank you for this opportunity," she told Andrew as she handed back the completed forms. "I won't let you down. Just do your job properly," he replied, but his expression had softened slightly. "Nancy, we'll meet you in the staff room at 5:45 this evening." Back in the service elevator, Amy allowed herself a moment of celebration. The weight on her shoulders felt a little lighter. The studio apartment with its leaky ceiling and temperamental heating might not be her home forever. The endless cycle of living paycheck to paycheck might eventually break. Outside the building, she paused to look up at the top floors, where the executive offices pierced the clouds. Somewhere up there was her new workplace, a world she would enter but never truly be part of. One day, she whispered, not entirely sure what she was promising herself. One day what? That she'd have an office in a building like this? That she wouldn't have to count pennies to buy groceries? That someone would look at her and actually see her? As she turned to head for the bus stop, Amy didn't notice the sleek black Mercedes pulling up to the building's private entrance, nor the young man who stepped out, his designer suit impeccable, his smile arrogant, his eyes never once glancing toward the slender figure walking away. Stephen Windsor III had never noticed the cleaning staff in his life, and why would he? People like him didn't need to see people like her, but soon that would change, and nothing would ever be the same again. Stephen Windsor III lounged in his corner office on the 75th floor, feet propped on a desk worth more than what most people earned in months. At 32, he had it all. The corner office with panoramic views, the seven-figure salary he barely earned, and the Windsor name that opened every door in the financial world. "So you're telling me," Steve said into his phone, twirling an expensive pen between his fingers, "that Tyler actually followed through and fired that secretary for bringing him the wrong coffee?" He laughed, the sound hollow and practiced. That's savage, even for him. His friends Eric Blackwell and Daniel Cooper sprawled on the Italian leather couch across from his desk, sharing meaningful glances. Both were sons of Wall Street titans, born into the same world of staggering privilege as Steve. "Speaking of bets," Eric said, leaning forward with a mischievous glint in his eye, "I've got a new one for you." Steve ended his call and raised an eyebrow. Their bets had escalated recently, from harmless wagers on sports teams to increasingly cruel pranks on staff members. Last month, Daniel had won $5,000 by convincing a new analyst the dress code included bow ties, resulting in the poor man being mocked for weeks. "I'm listening," Steve replied. His interest peaked. The thrill of these games was one of the few things that still excited him. "There's a new cleaning lady starting today. Nancy's training her." Eric smirked. 10 grand says you can't get her to attend the Wellington merger meeting as your guest next month." Steve scoffed. "Too easy. I'll have her thinking she's Cinderella within a week." "Not just attend," Daniel clarified. "She needs to believe she's there as a legitimate contributor. Then we pull the rug out." The three men laughed, the sound bouncing off the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city Steve's grandfather had helped build. None of them noticed the flash of disapproval on the face of William Windsor, who had quietly entered the room. "I see you're hard at work securing the Cooper Industries account," William said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had built an empire from scratch. At 65, he remained an imposing figure, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and uncompromising. The younger men straightened immediately. Unlike his son, William commanded respect. "We were just discussing strategy, Dad," Steve lied smoothly. William's piercing gaze suggested he knew better. "My office now." In his father's significantly larger office, Steve prepared for the usual lecture. William Windsor sat behind his desk, studying his son with a mixture of disappointment and concern that had become all too familiar. "The Wellington merger isn't a game, Stephen. It's worth billions." William's voice was measured, controlled. "Your grandfather started this company selling insurance door to door during the Depression. He worked 18-hour days while raising 3 children." "I know the story, Dad," Steve interrupted, fighting the urge to roll his eyes. "But you don't understand it." William stood, turning to look out at the city. "When I took over, I promised him I would build on his legacy. Now it's your turn, and instead you're gambling with people's livelihoods for sport." Steve shifted uncomfortably. His father always knew how to make him feel like a child. "The Wellington deal is practically done. They need our backing more than we need them." "Nothing is practically done until signatures are on paper," William replied sharply. "This merger will save thousands of jobs if handled correctly, but it requires someone who cares about more than their next amusement." The rebuke stung, but Steve maintained his composure. He'd endured worse. I've been patient, Stephen. I've given you every opportunity to prove yourself worthy of the Windsor name. William returned to his desk, pulling out a folder. But my patience has limits. He slid the folder across the desk. Steve opened it to find bank statements, his accounts, with significantly lower balances than there should have been. What is this? Steve demanded, genuine alarm breaking through his practiced indifference. Reality, William answered simply. I've instructed the board to reduce your salary to a more appropriate level for the work you actually do. Your trust fund allowance has been similarly adjusted. Steve's face flushed with anger. You can't do that. That money is mine. No, Stephen. It's the company's money. It's the shareholders' money. And it's my responsibility to ensure it goes to those who earn it. William's expression softened slightly. You could be so much more than this. Your mother would have expected better. The mention of his mother, who had died when he was 12, hit Steve like a physical blow. 20 years later, and William still knew exactly how to wound him deepest. Have 3 months, William continued. Show me you can handle real responsibility, that you understand what it means to be a Windsor, or I'll remove you from the executive team entirely. And if I just leave? Steve challenged, though they both knew it was an empty threat. Outside the Windsor Empire, his resume was remarkably thin. Then you do so without the Windsor resources. William turned his attention to some papers on his desk, dismissing his son. The choice is yours. Back in his own office, Steve slammed the door, ignoring the startled looks from his assistants. Eric and Daniel had wisely made themselves scarce. 3 months, he muttered, loosening his tie as he poured himself a scotch from the bar cabinet. The liquor burned his throat, but did nothing to dull the humiliation. His father had always been tough, but this was different. This was war. His phone buzzed with a text from Eric. Still on for the bet. Might cheer you up. Steve stared at the message, a plan forming in his mind. If his father wanted him to take responsibility, fine. He'd show William just how convincing he could be. And he'd use their little cleaning lady to do it. Game on, he typed back, a cold smile spreading across his face. But let's raise the stakes. 20,000 says I can not only get her to the meeting, I can make everyone believe she belongs there. As night fell over the city, he remained at his desk, something he hadn't done in years. When the lights dimmed in the hallway, he barely noticed. He was too busy planning how to find, charm, and ultimately destroy a woman whose name he didn't even know yet. This is your cleaning cart, Nancy explained, showing Amy the neatly organized supplies. At 62, Nancy's weathered hands betrayed decades of hard labor, but her eyes remained kind and alert. The executives like their offices cleaned in specific ways. I've made notes for each one. Amy nodded attentively, absorbing every detail. The Windsor building after hours was eerily quiet. The executive floors bathed in dim security lighting. Start with the lower executives on 65 through 70, Nancy advised. By the time you reach the top floors, most of the big shots should be gone. She patted Amy's shoulder. Don't worry if you don't finish everything tonight. First week is always overwhelming. 3 hours into her shift, Amy had settled into a rhythm. The offices were immaculate to begin with. The privilege of wealth meant even their messes were organized. She worked efficiently, memorizing the preferences. Nancy had noted. Mr. Evans on 67 liked his pens arranged by color. Miss Trent on 68 needed her chair at a specific height. Small details that made invisible workers like Amy valuable, if unacknowledged. By midnight, she'd reached the 74th floor, executive territory. Nancy had warned her that some stayed late, working or simply flaunting their dedication. Never make eye contact, Nancy had cautioned. Be like a ghost, get in, clean, get out. Amy pushed her cart quietly, checking each office before entering. Most were empty, their occupants long gone to penthouses and suburban mansions. She worked quickly, glancing occasionally at the framed photos on desks, smiling families on yachts, graduation ceremonies at prestigious universities, lives so removed from her own reality that they might as well be fiction. She entered what appeared to be an empty corner office, but froze when she realized she wasn't alone. A man sat in the shadows by the window, tumbler of amber liquid in hand, staring at the cityscape. I'm sorry, Amy stammered, backing toward the door. I can come back later. No need, the man replied without turning. His voice carried the unmistakable polish of privilege. Pretend I'm not here. Amy hesitated, then began her work, keeping her movements quiet and efficient. She could feel the man's eyes on her occasionally, though he never directly acknowledged her presence. As she emptied his trash can, a photo frame on his desk caught her attention. a boy with a woman whose smile reflected his own. The resemblance was striking. The boy's innocent joy contrasted sharply with the man now watching her from the shadows. "That's private," he said sharply. Suddenly beside her, Amy startled, nearly dropping the trash bag. "I'm sorry, Mr. Windsor. Stephen Windsor." His tone suggested she should recognize the name. Up close, she could see he was handsome in a manufactured way. Designer suit, perfect haircut, features arranged into a practiced expression of superiority. "And you are?" The question violated the unspoken rule. Executives didn't ask cleaners their names. Amy hesitated. "Amy Peterson, sir. First day." His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl, assessing rather than appreciating. "Yes, sir." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Well, Amy Peterson, welcome to Windsor Financial. Enjoying the view from the bottom?" The casual cruelty stung, but Amy had endured worse from foster parents who saw her as nothing but a monthly check. She kept her expression neutral. "The view is fine, sir. I should continue working." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, at her composure. He seemed to reassess her, his gaze lingering on her face. "You don't look like a cleaner. What does a cleaner look like, Mr. Windsor?" The words escaped before she could stop them. His eyebrows raised slightly. "Someone who knows their place." Amy fought to keep her hands steady as she continued cleaning. 17 foster homes had taught her when to speak and when to remain silent. This was definitely a moment for silence. "I'm hosting a gathering on Friday," Steve said suddenly. "The Wellington merger celebration, quite the event." He swirled his drink contemplatively. "You should attend." Amy blinked in confusion. "Sir?" "As my guest," he clarified, his smile reminiscent of a predator. "I find your perspective interesting, refreshing even." Warning bells rang in Amy's mind. Men like Stephen Windsor didn't invite women like her to corporate events out of interest in their perspective. "That's very kind, but I'll be working," she replied carefully. "I'll speak to Andrew. Your shift can be covered." Steve stepped closer, invading her space slightly. "Consider it a chance to see how the other half lives, unless you're comfortable remaining invisible your entire life." The words hit their target with precision. Amy had spent years being invisible, constantly told she didn't belong in spaces like this. The challenge in his eyes stirred something dangerous inside her, a desire to prove him wrong. "The event starts at 7, Steve continued, reaching into his pocket to produce a business card. "My number, text me your address, I'll send a car." Amy took the card reflexively, her mind racing. Every instinct warned her this was a terrible idea, yet she couldn't bring herself to refuse outright. "I'll think about it." "Do that." He returned to his window, dismissing her. "You can finish cleaning tomorrow. I need privacy now." Outside his office, Amy leaned against her cart, heart pounding. The business card felt like it was burning through her pocket. What game was he playing? Men like Stephen Windsor didn't see women like her. Not really. They looked through them, past them, occasionally down at them. Never at them. When she finally arrived home at 3 a.m., Amy's tiny studio apartment felt even smaller than usual. The ceiling leak had worsened, another pot catching the steady drip. She placed Steve's business card on her rickety table, staring at it as she ate a meager dinner of instant noodles. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. "Hope first night went okay. Forgot to mention, stay away from Windsor on 74, bad news." Amy stared at the message, then at the card. She should throw it away, forget the encounter, continue being invisible. Safe. But as she lay on her worn mattress, listening to the constant drip from her ceiling, Amy couldn't stop thinking about Steve's challenge. Was she comfortable remaining invisible her entire life? The truth was a painful ache in her chest. No, she wasn't. She never had been. With trembling fingers, she saved his number in her phone. She didn't text him, not yet. But she didn't throw the card away either. Something had shifted tonight, setting in motion events she couldn't possibly foresee. For better or worse, Amy Peterson was about to become visible. And visibility, she would soon learn, came with its own kind of pain. He did what? Nancy's voice echoed through the empty break room as she nearly choked on her coffee. It was Thursday evening, and Amy had just revealed Stephen Windsor's invitation. "Asked me to some Wellington merger event," Amy repeated, uncomfortable with Nancy's reaction. "Is it really that strange?" Nancy set down her mug, eyes narrowed with concern. "Amy, honey, men like Stephen Windsor don't invite cleaning staff to corporate functions because they're interested in your perspective. They do it for entertainment." The words confirmed Amy's suspicions, but hearing them spoken aloud made her stomach knot. So what's his angle? Could be anything. A bet with those friends of his, maybe trying to irritate his father. Nancy hesitated. Or something worse. Amy twisted the strap of her uniform. I haven't decided if I'm going. Listen to me. Nancy leaned forward, her voice dropping. I've worked here 20 years. I've seen girls like you come and go. The pretty ones always get noticed eventually, but never for the right reasons. Amy flinched. I'm not naive, Nancy. I grew up in the system. I know when someone's using me. Then why are you even considering this? Nancy asked gently. Amy struggled to articulate the feeling that had kept her awake last night. Because I'm tired of doors being closed before I even reach them. I'm tired of being told where I belong. Nancy's expression softened. Oh, sweetheart, I understand that better than you know, but there are ways to open doors, and then there are traps disguised as doorways. They were interrupted by Andrew poking his head in. Amy, Mr. Windsor called. You're excused from tomorrow's shift? Something about attending an event? His tone carried obvious disapproval. I haven't decided yet, Amy said quickly. Well, decide soon. I need to know if I'm short-staffed tomorrow. He disappeared, leaving an awkward silence. Great, Amy muttered. Now he thinks I'm trying to sleep my way up. Welcome to being a woman. In this building, Nancy replied dryly. Look, if you go, and I'm not saying you should, go with your eyes open. Set boundaries, and wear something that makes you feel powerful, not something that makes him feel powerful. After her shift, Amy stood in the single thrift store on her block, staring at her reflection. The black dress was simple but elegant. High neckline, fitted bodice, hem just above the knee. At $42, it would consume most of her food budget for the week, but somehow that seemed less important than having armor for tomorrow night. You look beautiful, dear, said the elderly shop owner. Special occasion? Amy hesitated. A work event. Must be quite the workplace, the woman remarked, eyeing Amy's cleaning uniform hung over her arm. You have no idea, Amy replied softly. That night, as rain hammered against her window and the ceiling drip grew more insistent, Amy texted Steve with trembling fingers. This is Amy Peterson. I'll attend tomorrow. Thank you for the invitation. His response came seconds later. Excellent. Car will pick you up at 6:30. Wear something appropriate. Amy stared at those last two words until her vision blurred. Something appropriate. As if she needed reminding that she didn't belong in his world, she glanced at the black dress hanging on her closet door, then at the stack of community college brochures on her nightstand, the business administration program that remained tantalizingly out of reach financially, the future she desperately wanted. One night, she whispered to herself, one night of being seen, then back to reality. Across town in his penthouse apartment, Steve lounged on his leather couch, smirking at his phone. She took the bait? Eric asked, pouring himself another drink from Steve's premium liquor collection. Was there ever any doubt? Steve replied. You should have seen her face when I invited her. Like a stray being offered a steak, Daniel laughed. The Wellington event is perfect. All the board members will be there. Your father too. That's the point. Steve twirled his glass thoughtfully. Dad wants me to show responsibility? Fine. I'll bring my charity case and play the compassionate executive giving opportunity to the less fortunate. And then, Eric prompted. Steve's smile turned cold. Then, we let everyone know it was all an elaborate joke. The look on her face will be priceless. 20,000 says she cries, Daniel wagered. 30 says she slaps you, Eric countered. Steve shrugged. Either way, we all win, and my father gets to see exactly what kind of responsibility matters to me. None of them noticed the apartment door opening, or Tyler Bennett entering with his own key, a privilege granted to Steve's closest friend since childhood. What did I miss? Tyler asked, dropping onto the couch beside Daniel. Steve's setting up the cleaning girl, Eric explained, for tomorrow's Wellington event. Tyler's expression darkened slightly. The merger party. Isn't that pushing it? Your father's going to be livid. That's the idea, Steve replied dismissively. Besides, she's just a cleaner. No one will even remember her name afterward. Tyler studied his friend with unusual seriousness. You've been different since your father cut your funds. This isn't just a game anymore, is it? Steve's jaw tightened. My father thinks I don't understand value. I'm going to show him exactly what I value and what I don't. Just be careful, Tyler warned. Your father holds all the cards right now. Not all of them. Steve's expression was resolute. After tomorrow, he'll understand that crosses me pays a price. Even him. The following evening, Amy paced her tiny apartment, checking her appearance in the cracked bathroom mirror. The black dress fit perfectly, and she'd managed a simple updo with her hair. Her only jewelry was a delicate silver pendant, her birth mother's, the single item she had from the woman who'd abandoned her at a fire station 19 years ago. At precisely 6:30, her phone buzzed with a text. Car waiting outside. Taking a deep breath, Amy grabbed her worn coat and small purse. Whatever game Stephen Windsor was playing, she'd face it with dignity, something she'd held on to through 17 foster homes, countless rejections, and years of invisibility. The Fiat Blacktown car gleamed against the dingy backdrop of her neighborhood. The driver opened the door with practiced deference. "Good evening, Miss Peterson," he said, with the same respect he would show any of Windsor Financial's executives. As Amy settled into the leather seat, a strange calm washed over her. For one night, she would be visible, seen. Whether as a person or a punchline remained to be determined. The city lights blurred as they drove toward the glittering hotel where the Wellington merger event was being held, toward Stephen Windsor and whatever he had planned, toward a collision of worlds that would change everything. The Grand Wellington Hotel's ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and old money. Amy's heart hammered against her ribs as the elevator ascended. The driver had escorted her to the lobby, but now she was alone, clutching her small purse like a shield. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world crafted exclusively for people unlike herself. Women draped in designer gowns worth more than her annual salary, men in bespoke suits, their watches alone costing more than all her possessions combined. She scanned the crowd for Steve, suddenly feeling the inadequacy of her thrift store dress. What had seemed elegant in her cracked bathroom mirror now felt painfully simple among the sea of luxury. "You came." Steve's voice behind her made her jump. He looked devastating in a tailored tuxedo, his smile practiced and perfect. His eyes traveled over her, assessing rather than appreciating. "The dress is quaint." Amy swallowed the sting of his words. "Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Windsor. Steve, please." He offered his arm with theatrical gallantry. "Let me introduce you to some people who matter." As Steve led her through the crowd, Amy felt the weight of curious glances and whispered comments. Some looks were merely puzzled, others openly disdainful. She held her head high, remembering Nancy's advice, boundaries and power. "Stephen, darling," a woman with diamond-studded glasses and an artificial smile intercepted them. "Who is your lovely friend?" "Mrs. Harrington, this is Amy Peterson." Steve's tone carried a subtle undertone that Amy couldn't quite decipher. "Amy works at Windsor Financial." "How wonderful," Mrs. Harrington replied, her eyes suggesting it was anything but. "In what capacity?" Before Amy could answer, Steve cut in. "Amy has a unique perspective on our operations, ground-level insights." The woman's smile never wavered, but her eyes cooled considerably. "How innovative of you, Stephen." As they moved on, Amy felt her cheeks burning. "You didn't have to be cryptic. I'm not ashamed of being a cleaner." "Of course not," Steve replied smoothly. "But this is a strategic event. Perceptions matter." He steered her toward a group of men, including Eric and Daniel, whose faces lit with predatory anticipation when they spotted her. "Gentlemen, meet Amy Peterson," Steve announced, his hand possessively at the small of her back. Eric's smile was shark-like. "Steve's told us so much about you." "Has he?" Amy replied carefully. The undercurrents in the room were becoming clearer. She was entertainment, not a guest. "Indeed," Daniel chimed in. "Your background is fascinating." Amy met his gaze steadily. "I doubt Mr. Windsor knows enough about my background to make it fascinating." An uncomfortable silence followed, broken by the arrival of Tyler Bennett, whose sharp eyes took in the scene with surprising perceptiveness. "Amy, right?" Tyler extended his hand with unexpected courtesy. "Tyler Bennett. Don't let these jackals intimidate you. Their bark is worse than their bite." "Careful, Tyler," Eric warned. "You're spoiling the fun." Tyler's smile tightened. "There are more important people here than us, gentlemen, like William Windsor at 2 o'clock, watching his son with particular interest." Steve's posture stiffened imperceptibly. Across the room, his father stood conversing with older executives, his gaze occasionally drifting toward them, with obvious curiosity. "Perfect timing," Steve muttered. "Excuse us, gentlemen. Time to show my father how seriously I'm taking his mandate for social responsibility." As Steve guided her toward William, Amy's unease grew. She was clearly a pawn in some power struggle between father and son. "Stephen," William greeted them, his piercing eyes immediately moving to Amy. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure. Dad, this is Amy Peterson. She works in our building." Steve's arm slid around her waist, a gesture of false intimacy that made her skin crawl. "I've been showing her our appreciation for staff at all levels." William's expression revealed nothing, but Amy sensed his skepticism. "Miss Peterson, welcome. I hope my son is being a proper host." He's been very— Amy paused, choosing her words carefully. "Educational, sir." Something like amusement flickered in William's eyes. "I can imagine. Stephen has always believed in learning experiences." He turned to his son. "The Wellington executives are asking for you. Something about finalizing the merger details." Steve's jaw tightened. "Of course. Amy, would you excuse us? Business calls." He turned to a passing waiter. "Get Miss Peterson a drink, would you?" And just like that, she was abandoned, a prop no longer needed for the performance. The waiter barely acknowledged her, immediately attending to more important guests once Steve was gone. Amy made her way to a quiet corner, fighting the urge to flee. She'd known this would happen, hadn't she? She'd been a fool to come. To think that for one night, she could step into this world and be seen as an equal. "They're quite the show, aren't they?" Amy turned to find Tyler Bennett beside her, offering a glass of champagne. "The Windsors," he clarified, father and son, locked in eternal combat. Amy accepted the drink cautiously. "Why are you being nice to me?" Tyler's smile held a hint of genuine warmth. "Maybe I recognize a fellow outsider. Despite appearances, I wasn't born into this." He gestured at the room. "My father worked his way up, and these people never let me forget it." Amy studied him, surprised by the honesty. "So why associate with Steve and his friends?" "Business necessities," Tyler shrugged, "but I don't share their appetite for cruelty." Before Amy could respond, Eric appeared, clearly intoxicated. "There's our little Cinderella. Enjoying your night at the ball?" "I was," Amy replied coolly. "Come on, don't be like that." Eric leaned closer, his breath reeking of expensive scotch. "We're all friends here. Tell me, how much did Steve pay you to come tonight?" "Must be more." "Then you make cleaning toilets." Tyler stepped between them. "Eric, enough!" "What?" "It's a legitimate question." Eric's voice carried just far enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "How much does it cost to rent a cleaning lady for the evening? Is there a special rate for—" "Finish that sentence," Amy interrupted, her voice deadly calm. "And you'll be wearing that drink, Mr. Blackwell." Eric's eyes widened in mock offense. My, the help has teeth." Several guests were openly watching now, including William Windsor. Amy felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. She'd spent a lifetime being viewed as less than disposable. Tonight was supposed to be different, but instead it was just a more elaborate version of the same old humiliation. "You know what's funny?" Eric continued, oblivious to Tyler's warning glance. "Steve only invited you because of a bet. $20,000 says he could make everyone believe a cleaning lady belonged here." He laughed, the sound cutting through the ambient noise. "Should have seen his face when you accepted, like he'd been handed the easiest money ever." The room seemed to tilt around Amy. The champagne glass trembled in her hand as the truth crystallized with devastating clarity. She was nothing but entertainment, a joke for rich men to laugh about over drinks. A bet. $20,000. The exact amount she needed for 2 years of business school. "Oops," Eric smirked, not looking apologetic at all. "Cat's out of the bag." Amy placed her untouched champagne on a nearby table with deliberate care. Her voice when she spoke was steadier than she felt. "Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Blackwell. At least someone here has the courage to speak the truth." She turned, intending to leave with whatever dignity remained, only to find Steve returning with William and several Wellington executives. The look on Steve's face when he saw Eric next to her confirmed everything. It hadn't been just a game. It had been calculated cruelty. Time seemed to slow as Steve approached with William and the Wellington executives. The look on Steve's face, pure panic replaced almost instantly by practiced charm, told Amy everything she needed to know. "There you are," Steve said too brightly, placing a possessive hand on her back. "I was just telling Mr. Wellington about your unique insights into our company culture." Amy stood frozen, acutely aware of all eyes on her. The humiliation burned through her veins like acid. 17 foster homes had taught her to swallow pain, to appear unbroken, even when shattered inside. That training served her now. "Mr. Windsor was explaining how valuable diversity of perspective is to your organization," said an older man Amy presumed was Mr. Wellington. He regarded her with polite curiosity. What department did you say you worked in, Ms. Peterson? Before Steve could answer, Amy met the man's gaze directly. I'm a cleaner, Mr. Wellington. I clean the executive offices from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. The awkward silence that followed was almost worth the look of horror on Steve's face. William Windsor's expression remained inscrutable, though something like interest flickered in his eyes. I invited Amy as part of our community outreach initiative, Steve stammered, attempting damage control, giving deserving employees glimpses of the executive experience. A cleaner. Mr. Wellington looked bemused. Well, that's certainly unorthodox. Actually, Amy continued, a strange calm settling over her, I was invited as part of a bet. Mr. Windsor stood to win $20,000 if he could convince everyone I belonged here tonight. The stunned silence that followed would have been comical under different circumstances. Steve's face drained of color. Eric shuffled uncomfortably. Tyler looked away, embarrassed but unsurprised. I should go, Amy said quietly. Thank you for the educational evening, Mr. Windsor. She turned to leave, head high despite the burn of tears threatening behind her eyes. She would not cry here. She would not give them that satisfaction. Ms. Peterson. William Windsor's authoritative voice stopped her. A moment, please. Amy turned reluctantly. William's piercing gaze moved from her to his son, whose expression had hardened into defiance. It was just a joke, Dad, Steve muttered. Lighten up, a joke. William repeated the word as if testing its weight. Is that what you call humiliating an employee of our company? Is that your understanding of leadership and responsibility? She's a cleaner, not an executive, Steve shot back. It's not like she was going to advance here anyway. The casual cruelty of his words struck Amy with physical force. This was how they saw her, how they all saw her, a non-entity, disposable. I apologize for my son's behavior, William said, addressing Amy directly. This is not how Windsor Financial treats its employees, at any level. Amy found her voice somehow. With all due respect, Mr. Windsor, I don't think your son is the exception. I think he's exactly what your company culture produces. He just says the quiet part out loud. William's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't interrupt. Tonight has been illuminating, Amy continued, surprised by her own steadiness. Thank you for showing me exactly what I'm working for, or rather, what I'm working against. With those words, she turned and walked away, feeling their stares burning into her back. She made it to the elevator before her composed facade began to crack. Inside, she punched the lobby button repeatedly, desperate to escape before the tears came. The doors were closing when a hand shot between them. Tyler Bennett stepped in, his expression grim. Are you okay? He asked as the elevator descended. Amy laughed bitterly. What do you think? I think you just showed more class than anyone in that room, Tyler replied. Including me. Were you in on it? Amy asked, her voice small. The bet. Tyler looked away. I knew about it. I didn't stop it. Not much better, is it? The elevator reached the lobby. Amy stepped out, the Grand Hotel suddenly feeling suffocating. I need air. Outside, the night air was cool against her flushed skin. Amy wrapped her arms around herself, wishing she'd brought a warmer coat. Let me call you a car, Tyler offered, keeping a respectful distance. No, Amy shook her head vehemently. No more Windsor charity. Then at least take this. Tyler shrugged off his suit jacket and offered it to her. When she hesitated, he added, It's 40 degrees out and that dress isn't exactly thermal. Consider it human decency, not charity. Amy accepted the jacket reluctantly. It smelled of expensive cologne and warmth. For what it's worth, Tyler said quietly. What they did was wrong. Steve's been spiraling since his father cut his funds, but that's no excuse. Why are you being kind? Amy asked, suspicious. Is this another bet? See if Tyler can get the cleaning girl to trust him after we humiliate her? Tyler winced. I deserve that. But no more bets. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling you. A rideshare, where do you live? Amy hesitated, then gave her address. As Tyler arranged the ride, Amy stared up at the hotel's glittering facade, thinking of all the invisible people who made such luxury possible. The cleaners, the kitchen staff, the doormen, all treated as background characters in the stories of the wealthy. Car will be here in 3 minutes, Tyler said, breaking into her thoughts. Black Toyota. Thank you, Amy replied stiffly. Will you be at work tomorrow? Tyler asked carefully. The question struck Amy like a physical blow. Would she? Could? She returned to cleaning the offices of people who saw her as less than human, who made bets about her as if she were a racehorse. "I don't know," she admitted. They stood in awkward silence until the car arrived. As Amy moved to return Tyler's jacket, he shook his head. "Keep it. You can return it if you decide to come back." The "if" hung in the air between them. Amy nodded. Once, then slipped into the waiting car, giving the driver her address. As they pulled away, she caught a glimpse of Stephen Windsor emerging from the hotel, scanning the street with an unreadable expression. The ride home passed in a blur. Inside her apartment, Amy carefully hung up the black dress that had cost her so much more than money. She placed Tyler's jacket beside it, uncertain if she'd ever return it. The ceiling leak had worsened during her absence, the collection pot overflowing onto the floor. Like her life, her home was literally falling apart. Around her, Amy sank onto her mattress, finally allowing the tears to come. They weren't just for tonight's humiliation. They were for all the doors that had been closed in her face, all the times she'd been deemed unworthy because of circumstances beyond her control. As dawn broke, Amy made her decision. She wouldn't give Stephen Windsor the satisfaction of driving her away. She would return to Windsor Financial, head held high. But things would be different now. She was through being invisible. No more silence, no more acceptance. The game had changed. Amy didn't go to work the next day, or the day after. By the third day, when she still hadn't appeared for her shift, Andrew left his 5th voicemail. "Amy, it's Andrew again. Look, I don't know what happened at that event, but your job is still here if you want it. Just call me back, okay?" She listened to the message with numb detachment. The apartment had grown cold. She was conserving heat to save money, and the ceiling leak had spread, forcing her to move her mattress to avoid the steady drip. She'd spent 3 days alternating between tears and rage, replaying the humiliation over and over. The knock on her door startled her. Amy rarely had visitors. Her first thought was her landlord coming to complain about the late rent. "Who is it?" she called cautiously. "Nancy," came the reply. From work. Amy opened the door to find the older woman standing there, concern etched into her weathered face. "You haven't been answering your phone." "I needed time," Amy replied, embarrassed by the state of her apartment as she let Nancy in. Nancy took in the leaking ceiling, the sparse furnishings, and the black dress still hanging on the closet door alongside Tyler's jacket. Her expression softened. "Oh, honey, what did they do to you?" The simple compassion broke something in Amy. Before she could stop herself, she was telling Nancy everything. The bet, the humiliation, her confrontation with the Windsors. "Those entitled bastards," Nancy muttered when Amy finished. "I knew something like this would happen." "I can't go back," Amy whispered. "How can I clean their offices knowing what they think of me?" Nancy studied her thoughtfully. "You know what my mother used to say? Sometimes God puts you in impossible situations not to break you, but to show people who you really are." Amy gave a bitter laugh. "What good does that do me? They still win." "Do they?" Nancy challenged. "That William Windsor isn't a fool. He saw what his son did, and more importantly, he saw how you handled it, with dignity." Amy shook her head. "It doesn't matter. I'm just the cleaning lady. For now," Nancy conceded. "But life has a way of turning the tables when you least expect it." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "This came for you at work. Andrew asked me to deliver it." Amy took the envelope warily. The Windsor Financial logo was embossed on heavy cream stationery. Inside was a brief note on William Windsor's personal letterhead. "Miss Peterson, I would appreciate an opportunity to speak with you at your earliest convenience. Please call my assistant to arrange a meeting. Sincerely, William Windsor." A business card was attached with a direct number. "What does it mean?" Amy asked, her heart racing. "Only one way to find out," Nancy replied. "But if I were you, I wouldn't. Go empty-handed." 2 days later, Amy stood in the Windsor building lobby wearing her one professional outfit, black pants and a blue blouse she'd bought for job interviews. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and she carried a folder containing the only leverage she had, her community college application and a proposal she'd stayed up all night refining. The receptionist, the same woman who had dismissed her on her first day, looked confused. "Mr. Windsor is expecting you?" "Yes," Amy replied simply, enjoying the woman's bewilderment. This time she was escorted to the executive elevator, not the service one. As she ascended to the 75th floor, Amy fought to control her nerves. She had nothing left to lose. That knowledge gave her an unexpected strength. William Windsor's assistant, a poised woman in her 40s, greeted her with professional courtesy. Mr. Windsor is finishing a call. He'll be with you shortly. Can I get you anything? Water. Coffee. Water, please, Amy replied, trying to hide her surprise at being treated like a legitimate visitor rather than an intruder. She was shown into an elegant waiting area where she sat clutching her folder, rehearsing what she would say. After about 10 minutes, the assistant reappeared. Mr. Windsor will see you now. William's office was twice the size of Steve's, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. The man himself stood as she entered, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Ms. Peterson, thank you for coming. Amy sat, back straight, meeting his gaze directly. Your note said you wanted to speak with me. William studied her with those penetrating eyes that seemed to miss nothing. First, I want to formally apologize for my son's behavior. It was inexcusable. Yes, it was, Amy agreed, refusing to soften the truth with politeness. But I suspect you didn't call me here just to apologize. A hint of a smile touched William's lips. Direct. I appreciate that. He leaned back in his chair. Tell me, Ms. Peterson, what are your aspirations? Surely cleaning isn't your life's ambition. The question caught Amy off guard. I want to study business administration. I've been saving for community college. And after that, Amy hesitated, then decided on honesty. I want to build something of my own, something no one can take away from me. William nodded thoughtfully. The night of the Wellington event, you said something that stayed with me. You suggested Steve wasn't the exception, but the product of our company culture. His expression grew serious. I've been reflecting on that observation. Amy remained silent, unsure where this was heading. I'm making changes at Windsor Financial, William continued, starting with how we treat our employees at all levels. He pulled out a folder of his own. I'd like to offer you a position as administrative coordinator in our Community Impact Division. Amy blinked in surprise. I don't understand. It's for a new initiative, William explained, focused on creating pathways for underprivileged individuals to enter the financial sector. The salary is $45,000 annually, with benefits and tuition assistance for your business degree. Amy's mind raced. The offer was life-changing, exactly what she needed, yet suspicion nagged at her. Why me? Is this because you feel guilty about what your son did? Partially, William admitted, his candor surprising her, but also because you showed something rare that night, integrity under pressure. That's not a skill that can be taught. Amy opened her folder and slid her proposal across the desk. Before I accept, I'd like you to see this. William raised an eyebrow but took the document. What am I looking at? My condition for accepting your offer, Amy replied. A complete overhaul of Windsor Financial's cleaning staff contracts. Living wages, healthcare from day one, educational opportunities, and clear advancement pathways. William studied the your proposal, his expression unreadable. You're negotiating for other people? For people like me, Amy corrected. People who are treated as invisible until someone needs to feel charitable. A long silence followed as William continued reading. Finally, he looked up. This would require board approval. It would be costly. So is turnover, Amy countered. And poor morale. Another lengthy pause, then unexpectedly William smiled. You have business instincts, Ms. Peterson. Come work for me and I'll present this proposal to the board with my full endorsement. Amy felt lightheaded. Was this really happening? And Steve, will he be part of this new initiative? William's expression hardened. My son is taking a leave of absence to reassess his priorities. His future at Windsor Financial depends on whether he learns from this experience. As Amy left the building 30 minutes later, employment contract in hand, she felt dizzy with the sudden reversal of fortune. The security guard, who had barely glanced at her cleaning badge, now nodded respectfully at her visitor's pass. Outside, she nearly collided with Steve, who was exiting a taxi. He froze when he recognized her. What are you doing here? He demanded, his arrogance tempered by obvious discomfort. Amy studied him, this man who had seen her as nothing but entertainment, who had been willing to humiliate her for his amusement. Now looking at him, she felt something unexpected. Pity. I just had a meeting with your father, she replied calmly. I start my new position on Monday. The color drained from Steve's face. What position? Administrative Coordinator, Community Impact. Amy couldn't help adding, it seems your little bet paid off after all, just not for you. She walked away without waiting for his response, her steps lighter than they had been in years. For the first time in her life, Amy Peterson wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. She didn't see the mixture of emotions that crossed Steve's face as he watched her go. Anger, confusion, and something else. Something that looked almost like respect. Amy's first day in her new position arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The Community Impact Division occupied the 55th floor, not quite executive territory, but far above where she had cleaned. As she rode the main elevator, not the service one, Amy felt the stares of curious employees wondering who she was. Her office was small, but had a window, a luxury she had never imagined having. A nameplate on the door read, Amy Peterson, Administrative Coordinator. The sight of it brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Settling in, William's assistant, Margaret, appeared with a stack of folders. These are the initial project outlines Mr. Windsor wants you to review. He scheduled a meeting with you at 2 to discuss implementation strategies. Amy took the folders. Fighting imposter syndrome. Thank you. Word of advice, Margaret added quietly. People will talk. There are already rumors about why you were hired. Hold your head high and let your work speak for itself. The warning proved prescient. By lunchtime, Amy had overheard whispers in the break room. Speculation ranging from her being William's mistress to a publicity stunt for the company's image. She ate alone, studying the project materials, determined to prove herself. The Community Impact Initiative was ambitious, creating apprenticeship programs, educational partnerships, and advancement pathways for service staff and disadvantaged youth. The irony that it had taken Steve's cruel bet to put her in position to help others wasn't lost on Amy. Her meeting with William was brief but productive. He seemed impressed by her initial suggestions, particularly her insight into barriers faced by employees from disadvantaged backgrounds. You've lived this, he observed. That perspective is invaluable. As Amy returned to her office, she turned a corner and came face to face with Steve. He looked haggard, his usual polish diminished. The sight of her stopped him short. Enjoying your reward? He asked, bitterness edging his voice. Amy refused to be baited. I'm doing my job, Mr. Windsor. You should try it sometime. This is all a game to my father, Steve warned, using you to teach me a lesson. Maybe, Amy conceded, but I'm going to make it more than that. For 2 weeks, Amy threw herself into her work, staying late and arriving early. The cleaning staff contract revisions were in legal review, and she had drafted proposals for 3 pilot programs. Her tiny apartment still leaked, but she had given notice. Soon she would be able to afford something better. One evening, as she worked late, a knock on her office door startled her. Tyler Bennett stood there, looking uncertain. You never returned my jacket, he said by way of greeting. Amy gestured to a neatly folded bundle on her credenza. I dry cleaned it. Was going to mail it to you. Tyler entered, closing the door behind him. Is it true? You're running the Community Impact Program now. Co-developing, Amy corrected. William still makes the final decisions. Tyler nodded, studying her with that same perceptiveness she had noticed at the gala. You know why he hired you, right? To punish Steve. Does it matter? The programs we're developing will help people. It matters if you're being used, Tyler replied. William Windsor doesn't make moves without multiple motives. Amy sighed, suddenly tired. What do you want, Tyler? To warn you. Steve isn't taking this well. He's unstable, drinking too much, making threats. Fear flickered through Amy. Threats against me? Against the program. Against his father. Tyler ran a hand through his hair. Look, I'm not defending him. What he did was inexcusable, but this Windsor family drama runs deep and you're caught in the middle. Before Amy could respond, the door opened again. Steve stood there, clearly intoxicated, his eyes moving between them with dangerous intensity. Cozy, he slurred. My father steals my project. You steal my position. And now my best friend, too. Steve, you're drunk, Tyler said firmly. Go home. Not until I say what I came to say. Steve's gaze fixed on Amy. You think you've won, don't you? The little cleaning girl who climbed so high. Amy stood, refusing to be intimidated. I think this conversation can wait until you're sober. My father doesn't care about you or your pathetic community programs, Steve continued, as if she hadn't spoken. He's using you to control me, just like he uses everyone. Once he's made his point, you'll be discarded. That's enough. Tyler interjected, moving between them. Is it? Steve laughed bitterly. You know what's funny? The night of the gala, when you called me out, that was the first time anyone stood up to me like that. It was almost Refreshing. The confession caught Amy off guard. There was something raw in Steve's expression now, something beyond the arrogance and cruelty, a glimpse of genuine pain. "I've been watching you," Steve continued, his voice lower. "Working late, taking this seriously. You actually care about this project, don't you?" "Some of us care about more than winning games and making bets," Amy replied evenly. Steve flinched as if struck. "You don't know anything about me. I know enough." Steve swayed slightly, vulnerability briefly replacing hostility. "My father is dying." The statement hung in the air, shocking both Amy and Tyler. "What are you talking about?" Tyler demanded. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Steve's voice cracked. "Diagnosed 3 months ago. That's why he's been pushing me so hard, why he cut my funding. He's putting his affairs in order, and apparently I'm not fit to take over." Amy felt the ground shift beneath her. William's urgency with the Community Impact Initiative, his sudden interest in company culture. It made a terrible kind of sense. "Does anyone else know?" she asked quietly. Steve shook his head. "Just the board. And me." He made them promise. His laugh was hollow. His final lesson to his disappointment of a son. The raw pain in his voice stirred something unexpected in Amy. Compassion. Despite everything he had done to her in this moment, Steve Windsor looked broken. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I don't want your pity," Steve snapped, the vulnerability disappearing behind familiar arrogance. "I want you to know what you're part of. This company is my birthright. When my father is gone, things will change." The threat was unmistakable. "So you should go," Tyler said firmly, guiding his friend toward the door. "We'll talk tomorrow when you're sober." After they left, Amy sat in stunned silence. William Windsor was dying. The man who had given her this unprecedented opportunity wouldn't be around to protect her or the programs they were creating. She stared at the project folders on her desk. Everything felt suddenly precarious, her new beginning built on shifting sand. When William was gone, would Steve dismantle everything out of spite? Would she find herself back where she started, or worse? For the first time since accepting the position, Amy felt real fear, not just for herself, but for all the people these programs could help. People like her who just needed one door to open. She couldn't let Steve destroy that. Somehow she had to make these initiatives too valuable, to dismantle, even by a vengeful heir. The challenge seemed impossible, but then, so had escaping poverty. So had standing up to Steve at the gala. So had securing this position. Amy Peterson had been fighting impossible odds her entire life. This was just one more battle. The weeks that followed Steve's drunken confession were some of the most challenging of Amy's life. She attacked her work with renewed urgency, knowing that William's remaining time, and by extension, her window of opportunity, was limited. Sleep became a luxury as she refined proposals, built community partnerships, and prepared for the board presentation that would determine the future of the Community Impact Initiative. "You look exhausted," Nancy commented during one of their weekly lunches. The older woman had become Amy's confidant, a bridge between her former life and her new one. "I'm fine," Amy insisted, though the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. "This isn't just about the program anymore, is it?" Nancy's perceptiveness was uncanny. "It's about proving something," Amy sighed, pushing her barely touched salad aside. "William's condition is worsening. The board presentation next week might be his last major act as CEO." She lowered her voice. "If the program isn't firmly established before he's gone," she didn't need to finish the thought. They both knew what Steve was capable of. "Have you considered talking to him?" Nancy asked. "Steve, I mean." Amy looked at her incredulously. "The man who humiliated me as a bet, who threatened to dismantle everything I'm building. The man who's losing his father," Nancy countered gently. "Grief does strange things to people, Amy, even entitled rich boys." Amy recalled the vulnerability she'd glimpsed during Steve's drunken visit, a crack in his arrogant facade revealing something broken underneath. Still, the idea of reaching out to him seemed ludicrous. "I need to focus on the presentation," she said firmly. "The program has to be too valuable for even Steve to dismantle out of spite." The day before the board presentation, Amy was reviewing her materials when there was a knock at her office door. Tyler Bennett entered, looking grave. "William collapsed this morning," he said without preamble. "He's in the hospital. The board presentation has been postponed indefinitely." Amy felt the floor drop beneath her. "How bad is it?" "Bad. They're not expecting him to return to the office." Tyler ran a hand through his hair. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss interim leadership. Steve, Amy asked, dreading the answer. Tyler's expression confirmed her fears. The board is divided, but he's William's son. Tradition carries weight. The Community Impact Initiative will be the first thing he cuts, Amy said, her voice hollow. Not if you can convince him otherwise. Tyler met her eyes directly. He's at the hospital now, 10th floor, private wing. Amy stared at him. You can't seriously be suggesting... I'm suggesting that sometimes the strongest move isn't fighting against someone, but finding a way to fight alongside them. Tyler headed for the door, pausing to add, Steve isn't his father, but he's not just the arrogant ass from the gala either. There's more there if you're willing to look for it. After Tyler left, Amy sat motionless, conflicting emotions warring within her. Every instinct screamed that approaching Steve was dangerous. He'd made it clear he saw her as a symbol of his father's disapproval. Yet the alternative was watching months of work evaporate, along with the opportunities for countless people who needed them. 2 hours later, Amy found herself in the sterile hallway of Manhattan General's VIP floor. A security guard checked her ID before allowing her to proceed. Outside William's room, she hesitated, hearing voices inside. Should have told me sooner, Steve was saying, his voice raw with emotion. All those years of pushing me, judging me, and you couldn't even tell me you were dying. Would it have changed anything? William's voice was weaker than Amy remembered, but the authority remained. Would you have suddenly become the man I've been trying to raise, instead of chasing the next thrill, the next cruel joke? That's not fair, Steve protested. I've been trying. The Wellington merger was secured by the management team, not you, William interrupted. Your contribution was inviting the cleaning staff to a gala as a prank. The silence that followed was heavy. Amy knew she should leave. This was a private family moment, but her feet seemed rooted to the spot. The board meets tomorrow, William continued. They'll name you interim CEO out of respect for me, but they're watching closely. If you continue as you have been, they'll replace you within 6 months. With who? Steve demanded. Some outsider who doesn't understand our company's legacy? Legacy isn't just about the family name on the building, Stephen. It's about the impact we leave on the world. William's voice grew fainter. That community program I started with Miss Peterson, that could be part of our legacy too. If you were wise enough to see its value. Amy backed away silently, her mind racing. She'd come hoping to appeal to whatever decency might exist in Steve, but now she realized the futility of her mission. He saw her as nothing but his father's puppet, a tool used to highlight his own failures. As she turned to leave, the door opened. Steve emerged, his face haggard, eyes red-rimmed. He stopped short when he saw her. Eavesdropping? He asked, but the accusation lacked his usual bite. I came to ask about your father, Amy replied truthfully. I didn't mean to intrude. Steve studied her with an unreadable expression. He's dying faster than the doctors predicted. A week, maybe less. The blunt assessment made Amy flinch. I'm sorry. Are you? Steve's voice was quietly skeptical. He gave you everything I've worked my whole life for. A chance to make your mark on Windsor Financial. The injustice of his words stung. Worked? You've never worked a day in your life. You were born with every advantage, every door already open. Do you have any idea what it's like to fight for every opportunity? To be judged not by your abilities, but by where you came from? Something flickered in Steve's eyes. Not anger, but recognition. Tomorrow the board will name me interim CEO, he said after a pause. My first official act will be reviewing all initiatives started under my father. The implied threat was clear, but Amy refused to be intimidated. Then review them. Look at the projections, the partnerships we've established, the lives that will be changed. If you still want to dismantle something that could genuinely help people, just to spite your father and me, then you're exactly the man he thinks you are. She turned to leave, but Steve's next words stopped her. Present to me, Amy looked back, uncertain. What? The board presentation you prepared. Present it to me instead. Steve's expression was challenging. Convince me why I should care about your program. Amy weighed her options. This might be her only chance to save the initiative. When? Tonight. My office. 8 o'clock. Steve glanced back toward his father's room. I'll be there after the doctors finish their final rounds. At 7:55, Amy stood outside Steve's office, presentation materials in hand, heart pounding. This wasn't just about her job anymore. It was about all the people who would benefit from these programs. People who, like her, just needed one chance to prove themselves. The office was dimly lit when she entered, Steve silhouetted against the night skyline, just as he had been the first night they met. But something was different. The arrogant posture was gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a man bearing an invisible weight. "Begin whenever you're ready," he said without turning. Amy took a deep breath and started the presentation she had rehearsed for weeks. The Community Impact Initiative wasn't just charity, it was strategic workforce development, community investment that improved the company's public image and a pipeline for overlooked talent. As she spoke, Steve remained silent, occasionally making notes but giving no indication of his thoughts. When she finished 20 minutes later, the silence stretched uncomfortably. "Is that it?" he finally asked. Amy's confidence wavered. "The financial projections show—" "I don't care about the projections," Steve interrupted, turning to face her. "I care about why you care. Why does this matter to you beyond it being your job? Beyond it being my father's pet project to spite me?" The question caught Amy off guard, but she found herself answering with unexpected honesty. "Because I was one of these people, invisible, disposable, one bad break away from homelessness, and sometimes all it takes is one person who sees value in you to change everything." Steve held her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. For the first time, Amy felt like he was truly seeing her, not as the cleaning girl, not as his father's proxy, but as a person with her own dreams and determination. "I'll make my decision tomorrow," he said finally, after the board meeting. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. By 8:30, the Windsor building was abuzz with rumors about William's condition and speculation about the company's future. Amy sat in her office, attempting to focus on work while her phone remained stubbornly silent. At 10:45, Margaret appeared at her door. "The board meeting just ended. Mr. Windsor, Stephen wants to see you in the executive conference room immediately." Amy's stomach knotted as she gathered her materials. The walk to the conference room felt like a march to judgment. When she arrived, she was surprised to find not just Steve, but the entire board of directors seated around the massive table. "Ms. Peterson," Steve acknowledged her from the head of the table, his father's position. "Please join us." As Amy took the only empty seat, she noted the grave expressions around the table. Had William passed during the night? The thought sent a chill through her. "For those who haven't met her," Steve continued, "this is Amy Peterson, the architect of our Community Impact Initiative." His tone gave no indication of his feelings about the program or her. "The board has just unanimously approved my appointment as interim CEO, following my father's retirement due to health concerns." Retirement, not death. Amy felt a small measure of relief. "My first act as CEO," Steve continued, "is to announce a strategic reorganization of our corporate structure. The Community Impact Division will be expanded and elevated to departmental status, with direct reporting to the Executive Committee." Amy's head snapped up in shock. This wasn't at all what she had expected. "Furthermore," Steve continued, "we'll be allocating an additional $20 million to accelerate the program's implementation across all Windsor financial operations." Murmurs spread around the table. $20 million was far more than William had initially budgeted. "Ms. Peterson will be promoted to Director of Community Impact, effective immediately." Steve's eyes met hers across the table. "Unless she has any objections." Amy struggled to maintain her composure. "No objections, Mr. Windsor." "Excellent." Steve turned to the rest of the board. "My father built this company on a foundation of recognizing value and opportunity where others didn't. It's time we extended that philosophy to our own workforce and the communities we serve." The meeting concluded with discussions of the transition plan and expressions of support for William. As the board members filed out, Steve gestured for Amy to remain. When they were alone, Amy found her voice. "Why?" Steve moved to the window, his posture reminiscent of his father's. "I stayed up all night, reviewing your materials. The program isn't just viable, it's brilliant. The financial projections, the community partnerships, the potential for talent acquisition." He turned to face her. "But more than that, it's the right thing to do." Amy studied him skeptically. "This isn't about spite or your father." "It's partly about my father," Steve admitted, "but not in the way you think. He's been trying to teach me something my entire life, and I've been too stubborn to learn it, which is that true power isn't in making people fear you or manipulating them for entertainment. It's in creating something meaningful." A hint of the old Steve emerged in his wry smile. "Besides, the PR benefits alone justify the investment. Windsor Financial promoting economic mobility? The press will eat it up. Amy wasn't entirely convinced. And my promotion? You earned it, Steve said simply. You stood up to me at the gala. You turned what could have been a humiliating experience into an opportunity. You created a program that could genuinely change lives. He paused. And you saw something in me worth appealing to, even after what I did to you. Before Amy could respond, Steve's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. I have to go to the hospital. We can discuss implementation details tomorrow. Is William? Not yet, but soon. Steve gathered his things, the weight of impending loss evident in his movements. The doctors say he's asking for both of us. Both? Amy repeated in confusion. You and me, Steve clarified. Will you come? The request surprised her, but Amy nodded. Of course. The ride to the hospital was silent, each lost in their thoughts. In the private room, William looked diminished against the white sheets, the machines around him emphasizing his mortality. His eyes brightened slightly when he saw them enter together. So you didn't fire her, he said to Steve, his voice barely above a whisper. I promoted her, Steve corrected, taking a seat beside his father, and expanded the program. The board approved it unanimously. William studied his son with newfound respect. Why? Because you were right, Steve admitted. About the program, about me, about a lot of things. William's gaze shifted to Amy. And you. You trusted my son with your project after what he did. I trusted the man I saw last night, Amy replied carefully. The one who was willing to listen even when it was difficult. A ghost of a smile touched William's pale lips. Perhaps I've underestimated you, Stephen, or perhaps Ms. Peterson sees something in you that I've missed. The three of them talked for nearly an hour, about the company, the program, even sharing personal stories Amy would never have expected. William spoke of his own humble beginnings, how his father had built the company from nothing during the Depression, how he feared Steve had never understood the value of that legacy. As William's energy waned, he asked for a moment alone with his son. Amy stepped into the hallway, her emotions in turmoil. The man dying in that room had changed her life, offering her an opportunity when she needed it most. And Steve, the man who had once seen her as nothing but entertainment, had just entrusted her with a $20 million program and a director's title. Life's unexpected turns left her breathless. After nearly 30 minutes, Steve emerged, his eyes red, but his expression composed. He's asking for you. Inside, William motioned weakly for Amy to come closer. Take care of him, he whispered, his voice fading. He needs someone who sees him clearly, who challenges him. I'm just his employee, Mr. Windsor, Amy protested. Gently, William's knowing smile suggested he saw more than she was ready to acknowledge. For now, perhaps. He reached for her hand with surprising strength. Promise me you'll continue what we've started. Not just the program, making Windsor financial what it should be. I promise, Amy replied, her vision blurring with tears for this man she barely knew yet who had somehow changed everything. Good. William relaxed slightly. Now send my son back in. And Miss Peterson, thank you for proving me right about recognizing potential in unexpected places. 3 days later, William Windsor passed peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was attended by hundreds, business leaders, politicians, employees from every level of Windsor Financial. Amy sat with the executives, uncomfortable with the attention but determined to honor William's memory with dignity. Steve delivered the eulogy with unexpected eloquence, speaking of his father's vision and integrity, of lessons learned too late but not forgotten. As he spoke, his eyes occasionally found Amy's in the crowd, an unspoken connection that confused and unsettled her. At the reception afterward, Amy stood alone, watching Steve move through the crowd, accepting condolences. Tyler approached, offering her a glass of water. You've come a long way from cleaning offices, he observed. Amy smiled faintly. Sometimes I still expect to wake up in my leaking apartment, late for my cleaning shift. Instead, you're Director of Community Impact, Tyler mused, with the full backing of the new CEO who happens to be the same man who once invited you to a gala as a cruel joke. Life is strange, Amy acknowledged. It's about to get stranger, Tyler warned, nodding toward Steve, who was approaching them with purpose. I need to speak with you, Steve said to Amy, privately. In a quiet corner of the reception hall, Steve handed her an envelope. This was in my father's personal effects. It's addressed to you. Amy opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note and a check for $20,000. I believe in settling debts. the note read in William's strong hand. "This was the amount of the bet between you and my son, a bet that ultimately revealed character in both of you. Use it wisely. It was never meant to be his, but perhaps it was always meant to be yours." Amy stared at the check in disbelief. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," Steve insisted. "Consider it the final word in our unusual beginning." Amy studied him, searching for the entitled, cruel man who had invited her to the gala months ago. He was still there, in the confident set of his shoulders and the privileged ease of his manner. But there was something else now, a thoughtfulness, a hint of his father's integrity beginning to emerge. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now," Steve's smile held a trace of his old confidence, but none of the arrogance. "Now we build something that matters. Together." The word hung between them, laden with possibilities neither was ready to fully acknowledge. For now it was enough that they had both come full circle, from a cruel bet to a shared purpose. Amy Peterson, once invisible, was now seen, and Stephen Windsor III, once blind to anything beyond his own amusement, was finally beginning to truly see. The lights slowly fade as we see Amy and Steve walking together down the corridor of the Windsor building. 3 years later, the company has transformed under their joint leadership, with the Community Impact Program now nationally recognized. Where once there was insecurity and arrogance, now there is partnership and mutual respect. At home, their 1-year-old daughter, Lily, waits for them in the arms of the nanny. Her name, a silent tribute to Steve's mother, whom they never met. The leaky apartment has been replaced by a warm home, not an ostentatious mansion, but a home built on shared values. Amy's journey from invisibility to recognition reminds us that our past doesn't determine our future, and Steve's transformation proves that it's never too late to rediscover our humanity. What story could be more powerful than this? A simple cleaner who transformed the life of a man who had everything except what truly mattered. A cruel bet that became the greatest blessing. And you, watching now, what bets has life placed against you? What obstacles seem insurmountable? Remember Amy, who faced humiliation and emerged stronger. Remember Steve, who needed to lose everything to find his true purpose. Your story can change today too. Life rarely follows the path we expect, but often leads us exactly where we need to be. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And click on the video appearing on your screen now. She was forced to marry her sister's blind fiancé until he saw her face. To continue watching emotional stories that can transform your perspective on life. Sometimes, our greatest pain becomes our greatest strength, and sometimes, our worst enemy becomes our greatest ally. What will be the next chapter of your story?